Hey everyone, my name is Zak Davis. I am the host of the ZHZ Podcast. In this episode, I'm going to give myself an introduction to you so that you have an idea of what this podcast will be like in the future. I'm new at this, but I'm very excited, and I will have a co-host next episode. We will introduce him. His name is Matt Allen. He's been a part of my life for a very long time, and he's been a fellow musician as well. So for those of you who don't know, I am the founder, frontman, writer of ZHZ, and I thought it would be really fun to do a podcast. So that's what this is. But I thought I would give you a little bit deeper introduction to who I am and what I'm all about. So I wrote a list of questions on a piece of paper over here, and I'm just going to read them out loud and answer them the best I can, as quick as I can. First question is, where are you from? I am from Layton, Utah. I was born in Ogden because they didn't have a hospital in Laytown at the time that I was born. It has since grown quite a bit, but that is where I'm from. I was pretty much born and raised in Layton, Utah. So I still am residing nearby. I don't really think I ever left, to be honest with you. I have traveled a lot. I just like it here. Number 2. What was your upbringing like? My upbringing was very similar to most American kids, Gen Xers, if you will. We played outside until the street lights came on. We were never in the house, or rarely in the house. We spent as much time as we could outside when we could. But other than that, it was pretty good. I mean, I was raised by my mom. We were kind of a single family home, or a single parent home. Just me, my brother, and my mom for the most part. And she always did what she could when she could. We didn't have everything in life, but it didn't seem like it was that big of a deal for us. I think we managed. We didn't feel like we were without in any way. And as far as that goes, with my mom being supportive, she was always supportive of our ventures or desires and passions. So when I told her I was into music, she was supportive. I mean, as much as she could be, and I'm forever grateful and blessed that she was there for me. That could have turned out differently, But yeah. Number 3, how would you describe your early experience with music? Well, my stepdad at the time, because when he was living there, I think he bought my mom a piano, and we had it in the living room for a while. And it didn't get played too much, and then I think one day I decided I wanted to play it, and I just kind of picked it up and fell in love with it, and probably drove my mom nuts trying to figure it out for hours and hours and hours. But they tell me there was a story when I was 3 or so that my aunt or somebody had got me a toy called the Magical Musical Thing, which was made by Mattel, and it was just this little synthesizer type keyboard stick thing that you would hold, and it was a ribbon synth basically, and you could just push a certain part of the strip and it would change pitches, and it had different colors and numbers and a little book that you can learn songs on and stuff. So they say that was my first musical instrument. It probably was, and they said I used to play it all the time, and I do vaguely remember playing it. Actually, I do remember that toy. And let's see, next question. What unique aspects do you feel are highlights in your life that shaped your journey? Support, my mom's support, my mother's support, family support, really. I remember it kind of kicked off as far as wanting to do it a little more seriously when my mom took me to see Oingo Boingo rock concert. And I remember watching Danny Elfman there on stage doing his thing, and I just thought that was the coolest thing ever. And that was kind of at that moment, it was epiphany, like, I want to do that. Like, I want to capture people the way he just did me, and that was a big part. That was one of the highlights. Another highlight was when I had my scout master at the time, named Alma, asked me if I wanted to be part of the talent show at the local church. And I said, sure. So I performed a couple of songs, and it was completely nerve-wracking, and I was terrified. I knew pretty much nobody there except for him. I had a little keyboard with built-in speakers. There was no PA hooked up or anything. I just had a couple of microphones. So I had like one microphone on this side and then one microphone on this speaker here. And I just played a little instrumental song that I wrote. And after that song was done, it was so quiet. Like I couldn't hear anything. And I'm looking out at the crowd and it wasn't what I expected. I didn't expect silence, right? Because there was no indication whether it was good or bad. It was just silence, like I was living in the Twilight Zone or something. And I didn't know what to say, so kind of leaned into the mic and like, I can play another one if you like. And they all cheered. So it was really cool. Very big, like, this is such a rush. So it was that moment that I knew that this was really fun. I wanted to keep doing it. So that's that one. Okay, next question. What is it about music that you love? I love so much about music. It's ridiculous. I love that music transforms or transcends languages. I love that music is to me, the ultimate, or even art for that matter, but is the ultimate expression of being human, like it can transcend time, but it can also encapsulate time, and it just makes you feel good. It's almost like a trigger, like a good song. Like a good example is, let's say there's a good time there's a time in your life, say your senior year in high school. You remember the songs that were on the radio at the time, right? Because you listen to them all the time. When years down the road, that song comes on, it kind of triggers those, like, I remember this song. I remember being in high school. And you start thinking about some of these memories. I like that music can trigger emotions. I like that it can trigger memory. It can trigger energy. It can get people through tough times. It can accentuate the good times. It's like it's therapy. It's therapy for the soul. And I wouldn't chalk it up to just music. I think all kinds of art can do that, between writing and painting and illustration and just about every kind of art you think of. I mean, video, really, so people watch movies to get escape, to escape the reality. And I think that's a human phenomenon that we as humans can dive into. It's like it's just kind of who we are. So yeah, music is right there. It's always been there since the beginning, and it's still there today. And I feel blessed to be a part of it in any way. Next question is, what inspires you to continue making music? Probably those same reasons, because of those same reasons. If I can make somebody's life a little bit brighter, a little bit better, or a little bit more relatable, then I've done my job. Like I write music because I love it. I write it for me. But at the same time, I write it because I want to be appreciated and remembered, right? So to me, that's like my way of saying, hey, I was here. But on the other hand, I want people to enjoy it and have some sort of relation to music as well. I realize you can't write music that's going to appeal to everybody. That just doesn't exist. But somebody out there, even if it's just one person that I touched in some way or triggered some emotion or memory or helped them through some tough time or whatever, to me, then it's worth it. Just that one person even. Let's see. Next, I gotta flag these questions so I don't get lost. Next question is, what genres resonate with you? What genres resonate with me? I like I like all genres for the most part. I can listen to most everything. There's some stuff I can't listen to like all day long. I think that goes for everybody. Everyone has their favorite, but some of my favorites are rock, alternative, reggae, ska, electronic, modern rock, like the old 80s bands, like modern bands from the 80s. I like new stuff that's kind of a hybrid between like electronic and natural instruments. If it sounds good and it feels good, it's good. The two genres I probably listen to the least, not that I don't like them, I just don't listen to them as much, is probably like country pop country, some metal, and probably some hip hop. I like hip hop, but not all the time. Like, so, but yeah. Next question. What are a few of your favorite artist albums and songs? Few of my favorite. I just do the artists because I like just about everything they do. Excuse me. Some of my favorite artists are the Beatles, the Doors, Jim Morrison of the Doors, Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, all the classic rock stuff. I love all that. I love reggae, Bob Marley. Started with that, and then there's so many more. Like, then you got your whole West Coast rock reggae bands. I fell in love with growing up was when these bands first started coming out with Sublime and 311, and have since graduated into some of the more influences that they influenced. Was like UB40 was another reggae band I absolutely adored. But then you have like Stick Figure, Dirty Heads, all of those bands. But as far as that goes, as far as my top favorite bands, I would probably say the Beatles, Boingo, Depeche Mode, The Cure. Those are heavy influences on me, but they're not necessarily my favorite genres or genres that I resonate with. But I resonate with mostly alternative rock, ska, and reggae. That's probably where I sit, somewhere in there. Next question. How have they left a lasting impact on your life? They are the soundtrack to my life. They have been the soundtrack to my life. They continue to be the soundtrack of my life. And even if they're not around anymore, they still impact me in my influence when I write. And I don't necessarily understand it when I'm writing the song. Sometimes I have to have a third party listen to it and go, this reminds me of this. Oh yeah, I like those guys. So no surprise that it reminded you of them, but they're always going to be an impact on my life. Next question. Can you walk us through your process of composing, producing, and recording music? Sure. So Z Frequency is a little bit different than your typical band. It's kind of a one-man show, but at the same time, it's an everyman show. Lately, at this current time, I have a list of songs that I wrote years ago that never really got seen the light of day, but I decided, hey, we should put them to music. And when I decided to do this project, I decided to select a certain amount of these songs, like I did 15, 12 of them out of 30 or 40. I decided, okay, this is going to be a song I want to finish. So then instead of me doing the drums exclusively, I called up or hit up my fellow bandmate and friend, Mike Lomax, and said, hey, I'm doing this new project. I need a drum track. Or would you be interested? And so he said, sure. So he has his own studio, his own setup. So I sent him the music and I sent him the BPMs and the bit rate and all that. He records it at his own house in his own studio, his drums, and then just sends me back the drum tracks. And then I will take those drum tracks. So usually they're just samples of a beat or something, like a placeholder. I'll take those out and then I'll put his drum tracks in. And then I go down that same process with the guitars, the bass. Sometimes the brass and vocals will be done here, because they don't have a studio. If they don't have a studio, we can do it here. Or we can go to another friend of mine, Michael Esco's. He's got a studio set up in his basement that will fit a whole band even. So that's where the big stuff goes. But yeah, so then they send their tracks back. I mix it down, I submit it, and so then it becomes what it is. It's each song is different in the way that it sounds different, but it's also different because that it has a rotation of different members involved in that. And I usually try to keep it pretty open. So when I send out for a guitar line, they'll maybe ask me like, what are you feeling on this? I'm like, I don't know, maybe this or this, but I leave it pretty open. Like, you do what you want and send back what you feel like it needs to be in there. So a lot of these songs aren't just me anymore. They're everybody, and they're what they feel was it's like a blank canvas, if you will. And I kind of drew a little bit of a shading of the outline or whatever. And then, the guitarist will come in and he'll paint his little bit of his flavor in. And then then the drums come in and the bass comes in and the vocals do their thing. And by the time it becomes this cool, beautiful, amazing picture. But that's kind of the process. I usually write songs in this process when I'm sending them out. They're usually months in advance before they actually show up to where you can hear them, or distributed. But, so I'm usually a few months in advance. Let's see. What are some interesting anecdotes and challenges you faced during production? There's always challenges and anecdotes. Sometimes you are working on something and nothing comes to you. Like you've got to write. Like, I think one of my biggest challenge for me personally is when it comes time to writing lyrics. It's usually kind of further back in the process between tracks coming in and out, and I'm usually working on 3 songs at any given time. So it's like one song might be more done than the other, but all of a sudden it hits some sort of a challenge or a roadblock, or we're waiting on something. And so then the next one will kind of get legs and start moving. So I kind of shifting around, but at a certain point of the process, there's like, okay, you got to write words. And my biggest challenge for me is just writing words that I feel are good and relatable, and they don't come off sounding too cringy or cheesy. It's a personal thing. I know people write cheesy lyrics all the time. I know people write cheesy lyrics all the time, but I try to avoid that. Yeah, that seems to be my biggest hang up, and then lately though, it's, I've been doing this since January now, where I've kind of forced myself into it. At least once a month, I'm going to have to sit down and work on a new song, work on lyrics for a song. So they come out when they need to come out, and they usually come out pretty good. I feel pretty pleased so far with lyrical value, if you will, on each of these songs. But that is my personally biggest challenge. And sometimes like things that come up that you didn't expect, like when you're doing the recording or tracking process, where you ad-libbing something on vocals and then you didn't mean for that to be in there, but somebody, like, it just sounded good, and you're like, oh no, we'll leave that in there, So sometimes happy mistakes happen. But yeah, as long as you keep it open-minded, and I try not to sweat it anymore. Like I'm like, yeah, I just getting better at it. Like I feel like I'm more open to sitting down and like, okay, I got to write some words. Before it was really daunting, like I would sit here, stare at a blank piece of paper for the longest time. Like, I got to do something. It's a little bit easier now. The process, and I keep trying to remember myself back then when I was in Hooray Who, like, how was that? How did I make that happen? And so, but what I do now maybe not be exactly like I did before, but it's getting better. But that was probably one of my biggest challenges as far as the production process. The other process is just waiting on other members that, or musicians that want to participate. I'm waiting for them to bring tracks back. And usually it's just that waiting period. But that's usually not a problem per se. There's been times where I've invited musicians to be on a track, and at first they say yes, and then for whatever reason they got to decline. The sooner they tell me, the better off it is, because I just have a list. I have a rotation of people, so usually I get that resolved before it becomes a real problem. So far, yeah, that's my facing production challenge for me is lyrics, writing lyrics, melodies or whatever, because most of these songs don't have singing. Like, I don't write that way. I'll write the music first, and then I'll think about the words later. Excuse me, I gotta get a drink. All right. Next question. What did it feel like the first time you performed live? The ultimate rush. It was the ultimate rush. Like, I can't describe it any more than that. Like, it makes you feel. It's hard to describe much more than that. Like, it's hard to put into words the feeling. You feel appreciated. You feel like all of the hard work that you put into creating that performance pays off when you hear people cheering. And it can be devastating the other way, like, and that's assuming you have a good crowd and everybody's into it. It's been the other way too, where you've worked really hard and you show up to a bar and there's nobody there but the bartender and maybe 2 other guys. and one of them is your roadie, and the other guy is the guy who's always at that bar, and you're just playing. It's almost like a rehearsal somewhere else. And you'll have that, right? You're going to have those experiences. But my first time performing, I kind of explained that earlier. That was my first time performance. My first time performing live with a band. It was Deep Blue, I think, when I worked at Lagoon, and we played for like a company party thing. And that was awesome. And it was chaos, right? It was chaos, and we didn't know what we were doing, but man, we tried like hell to pretend like we did know what we were doing, and everyone enjoyed it. And then I don't think anyone cared that it wasn't polished, So that was. What was it like being a musician in a band during those early years? Well, when I was younger, I could do it all the time. I wanted to do it all the time. I ate, breathed, and slept music. Playing shows as much as possible. It's a lot of work, and but when you don't have a career, bills, and mouths to feed, you can do that sort of thing. It's a little different when you're my age. That I think the difference between there is I'm a little bit more methodical about when I do stuff playing live, but I wouldn't play as nearly as much as I did back then. I don't know, like, unless I was on a tour maybe. But yeah. Being in the band during those early years, there was a lot of learning. There was a lot of arguments. There was a lot of wanting it done in one way, and having disagreements and coming up with compromises. There were times where everybody was all in the zone. They're on the same page, and then there were times where we weren't. And I think being in a band, part of the process is just it's like a relationship. You got to communicate. You got to be open and honest with each other, and everybody's got to enjoy it. Otherwise it just doesn't last. Let's see. Next question. In reflection, how would you say those moments influenced your growth? Well, I think when you're doing something like that, and let's say you do a show and you decide you want to try a certain set of type of gear that you bring or whatever, and you set it up and turns out it was a bad idea, well, then you learn from that and you don't bring that gear, or you change it up. Or I think always being open to evolving into trying new ideas and trying to figure out how something can work. Like for me, I'm like, well, this is the end result. This is what I want. And then I try to just figure out how can I get there from where I'm at now. That's kind of how it influenced my growth. Like I also realized that almost every show I've ever done has never gone off without a single problem, a single challenge, a single hitch. Like it has never been that case. Like there's always something. Either somebody's late, or a piece of gear breaks, or goes missing, or we forgot something. The venue is something up with them. It's always going to be at least one thing. So I think over time, you just kind of count on it, like, well, it's going to be now. And then you do your best to prepare for it. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. You just roll with it. And as long as you can stay creative with that, you'll be fine. It doesn't matter what situation you run into, unless, like the lead singer gets in a car wreck on the way there or something, then obviously that's going to be kind of a show killer. Well, not really. It'd just be an instrumental, show at that point. So yeah, just being able to think out of the box. That's the best way to approach moving on, and trying new things and wanting new things, wanting to do something different and figuring out how to get there, which is kind of what this whole project is for me. Next question. What obstacles have you overcome? I'm overcoming them every day. Right now it is time, it is energy, and it is, those two are the biggest ones. Like I'm not young anymore and I don't have a lot of time. So I try to make the best of it. Those are my biggest challenges. And time management, managing the time that I do have. That's another challenge. Those are obstacles I'm still trying to overcome. The other thing is to grow, try to understand the social media thing, like I try to post. Sometimes I feel like an idiot, but I don't know, I just got to keep doing it fake it till you make it. I don't know. Next question is, how do you deal with writer's block? What I usually do is I try to set aside a certain amount of time each day or whatever I allocate during that week. Like, okay, I'm going to set this amount of time to write. And it's not as easy as just like, okay, it's time to write, and you go down and you write. But you always give yourself that opportunity. So sometimes I'll come down here in the studio, turn everything on, open up my DAW, and start fiddling around with stuff, or try to come up with an idea. And sometimes it hits me. And if it hits you, just roll with it, right? Just go. But if it doesn't hit you, you tried for 15 minutes and you gave yourself that amount of time. Step away, do something else. Don't beat yourself up over it with writer's block. There are other ways. Be inspired. Watch movies. Listen to other music. Listen to your favorite music. AI's come a long way. Like, they have this site called Suno that you can type in, some sort of genre that you're interested in doing, and then they pop up some music right away, and you can get inspiration there. Writer block seems to be a lot easier for me. I think the biggest writer's block I have is lyrical. When I'm trying to write lyrics, that's when I usually stumble on the writer's block stuff. Next question is, how do you push through when things are difficult? That's a good question. I think when things are difficult, you almost have to like step back and give yourself that 30,000 foot view of like, why are you even doing this? And I have weeks where I hate it. I have weeks that I go through that. One week I'm like, this is so stupid. I'm wasting so much of my time and energy. Why am I even doing? Nobody cares. You go through the woe is me. And then the next week, something happens. I write a new song, or a song that I'm working on finally sends a piece music, their track back, and it just gets you all reinvigorated and inspired again. And so it's this roller coaster, and I'm on it, and I finally accept that I'm on a roller coaster, and that when I have those difficult times, if I have to remove myself from there for a minute, I do, and deal with what I got to deal with, and then come back. And sometimes you get burned out on certain things. You got to just try something new. But yeah, I think it really boils down to determination. How bad do you want it? Like, it's going to be difficult, right? This podcast is going to probably, my hope anyways, is that it's the worst one I've done. I hope, because it's number one. I hope it's the worst one, and they're not going to be great at first. I understand that. Same with my YouTube videos, same with music, same with anything that anybody starts, like nobody steps up to the plate and hits a home run on their first try. You gotta start at zero. And I think if you know that, then, and you were able to step back and, like I said, look 30,000 feet, down, you'll see just how far you've actually come, and that, you've made it a lot longer or a lot higher or further than you thought you would. What's one piece of advice you can give someone who is just starting their journey? Well, as far as music goes, is stay true to your passion. Do whatever you can do when you can do it with what you have. Don't sweat having the perfect guitar. Don't worry about having that new plugin. Don't worry about having the best equipment and whatnot. It comes when it comes. And stay consistent. Don't give up. You're going to write some bad stuff. You're going to, especially starting out, don't expect to be perfect. If you stifle yourself under the presumption of it's not perfect, you're never going to have anything come out. And I've learned that, I have to like be willing to let stuff just be where it is, because at the time I have to remind myself, like, hey, you know what? This is the best I can do at this time in my life. I should be okay with this. And years down the road, when I listen to it, I'm like, oh, it was bad, But at the same time, I'm like, you know what? But that was the best I could do at the time. That's not what I can do now. It's almost an affirmation of your growth too when you listen to some of the older stuff that you've done. Let's see. Next question. What's next for you regarding your music journey? So my music journey right now this year is put out music. I had this goal beginning of January 2024 was to release music, at least a new song every month. And so far I've been doing that. And then at the end of the month, right towards October, I'm going to release maybe 2 or 3 songs at the same time. And then I'm going to tie all of those singles that I release throughout the year underneath it as a complete album. And that's going to be my kind of thing for the next few years until I decide maybe I'd do something different. But right now, that's my plan. And the whole plan for Z Frequency is just grow, grow fans, grow music, get better at what we're doing, have fun with what we're doing, learn the process of what we're doing. And so the whole goal this year was to grow. Next year, I want to do more heavy on, the YouTube channel, do more with this podcast, do more with merch designing and graphic design. And the other big element with Z Frequency is to start doing live performances next year. I didn't want to do it this year because I don't really have, I wanted to make sure we had a set, we don't even have enough songs to do a set. I guess we could pull out some covers or whatever, but there's a whole dynamic of doing live when you don't have like with the studio stuff, we have a constant rotation of musicians, so we have like a guitarist. Our guitarist may not be the same guitarist on every song. With a live show, it'll be kind of similar in the sense, but if we find a guitarist that's willing to do a live gig, then they're only going to be expected to do that one show. If they enjoy it and they want to do another one, easy peasy, right? So I'm kind of treating the live setup the same way I'm treating the studio setup, because with the studio setup, when these guys say, yeah, I want to do it, I don't expect them to do the next one either, unless I'll ask them. And if they say, yes, cool, awesome. But I don't expect them to do it. There isn't like a core band that comes and rehearses every week and stuff like that. With the live, it's a little different. We're going to be a little bit more planning ahead. They'll have their own personal mixes without, so a guitarist will have a whole mix of the show from first song to the last song with everything in there except for the guitars that they're going to work on. And so they'll have to study that at home. And then maybe, a few weeks before the gig actually takes place, we'll do a live rehearsal just to see how that all fits together, because we are going to be using backing tracks on that. The plus side of that is I don't have to have a full band. It could be as little as just me, up on the stage, or it could be as big as the whole band. And at that point, I wouldn't need backing tracks. The point is, it doesn't matter the venue, it doesn't matter the size, it doesn't matter the amount of people that are playing. I can accommodate all of that with the live thing. And I have a feeling that there'll be some musicians that may or may not be also a part of the studio project, but there'll be a handful of musicians that will enjoy it. And I think after a few gigs, there's going to be a certain amount that are just always try to be available, and that's the nice thing is even if I had, let's say, a guitarist, it's yeah, every time you have a live gig, I want to be there, at least hit me up first. I will. And then by chance they can't make it or whatever, I could either find someone else, or I can just not have that guitar in there on that show. So yeah, that's how I'm going to do that. Where can listeners find out more about you? Well, we are on all the major streaming platforms under Z Frequency. We're on Spotify, Apple Music, iTunes, Amazon, Deezer, SoundCloud, YouTube, all of them. We're on all of them. We also have a website. Official website is zfrequency.com. That's where you can also find other information about music and all the other little things that we got there. That's where you would find information about new merch or shows or any news or gossip, songs coming out. You can reach out to me directly by emailing me at zfrequencymusic@gmail.com, or you can go to our website at zfrequency.com and go to the contact us and leave a message that way. Okay, well, my name is Zach. Thank you for listening, and stay tuned to the next one. You don't want to miss it, because I am going to ask Matt these very same questions. And Matt Allen, if you don't know, is our co-host for the Z Frequency Podcast. I hope you have a great day and stay tuned.